Hey, Jim, excited to have you on today and looking forward to catching up, talking a little bit about the past, but mostly the new things that you guys have going on at Traxxion. I actually wanted to start with a little story because I was going back through old email records and I saw that we first met on November 1st of 2018. Now, OutSail at that point was less than 60 days into operation, and you were SVP of Alliances at Ceridian, I believe. At that point in time, I could promise you no one else at your title at that type of organization was giving us the time of day. But you spent 30 minutes learning about what we were doing, and we executed one of the first referral agreements that OutSail had with Ceridian. So wanted to share that because I was looking back at it, and it just always stood out to me as something I appreciated about you and kind of the way you went about things.
Well, thank you. I do remember that. By the way, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, it's call it whatever you want, call it karma, but I don't know. I feel like I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And now, all these years later, I'm calling in my chits and I'm asking those people to treat me the way that I treated them. So, and here we are. So, no,
Exactly.
it's been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, no, happy to learn more and share more about Traction. And yeah, would love to just start like hearing a little bit more about kind of the journey that you had in HCM. Obviously, very decorated career up until a couple of years ago when you decided to take a step back, and maybe start there, and then let's jump in after that to kind of what got you back in the arena.
Yeah, so I mean, look, nobody chooses to go into payroll. It kind of chooses you. And I was working on Wall Street for JP Morgan Bank. I was doing great. And this little company in South Florida said, "Hey, you should come, join us and help lead the development team here." And so after a long thought, I thought, yeah, why not? The bank wanted me to move up to Manhattan. I didn't want to do that. I was living in DC at the time. So I joined Ultimate as employee 29, I think it was, to run development. And then for the next almost 22 years, it was the greatest time of my life. It was unbelievable. Everything from I used to sleep on Scott Shear's couch at night, and I would wake up and he'd be there in the morning with a coffee and a bagel for me or something. And it was just great building the company. And Scott and Viv had a way of, creating a culture there that everybody was just enjoyed and we thrived in. Everybody had ownership in the company. And so I did that for Ultimate, and like I said, about 22 years. And then I decided to move on from there and joined David Ossip over at Dayforce. We were going to go public on New York Stock Exchange, so did that. Got to stand on the platform and ring the bell and be on the trading floor when we went public. It was just a great opportunity experience then too. And I, in my 30 years in doing this, I what I enjoyed was that I was able to wear a lot of hats. I was able to, if there was something that needed to be, taken and run with, they'd be like, give it to Jim. He'll run with it. And I would either make it or break it. And I enjoyed that. It was that whole entrepreneurial thing. And both Scott and David both just gave me the autonomy to kind of do things the way I saw that made sense and the way felt it should run. And I was very fortunate to have tremendous success doing that. And then with 2021, with COVID happening and things were kind of going status quo where I was at Dayforce, and I just thought, you know what, I've had a really good run. I like to come in and be disruptive and figure out what's broken and fix it and try new things. And so when things kind of got to status quo, it wasn't as interesting. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to pull back a little bit. I was spending 4 or 5 days a week flying all over the world, and that can be tiring. So I took 4 years off, and I was mostly focused on advising venture capital, private equity, investment banks on divestitures, carve outs, and new market penetration. I was advising some companies in tech space, sitting on some boards, and everybody said, "Jim, when are you going to come back in? Like, what is it that's going to take to bring you in?" And it was, to me, it was real simple. It was, I've been fortunate. Like I've made my place. But if it was something I could get really passionate about, that I was willing to trade time for money for, and I felt that there was enough of an addressable market and a need for the product rather than just some other piece that bolts on, that I would, put my cleats back on and jump back in the game. And then with everything that happened in the consolidation in the workforce management space, right? We all know WFM is the most complicated part of all human capital management, followed closely by payroll, right? And that's evidenced by look at how many HR companies there are and how few enterprise payroll and how few enterprise WFM vendors there are. So, with the consolidation that was taking place in the market, Kronos and Ultimate merged. Dayforce is a full HCM product. Swipe Clock gets acquired by Iris. Workforce Software gets acquired by ADP. There's this vacuum created where there's not a great SMB mid-market enterprise WFM solution that companies can feel safe to partner with, that won't try and take the whole deal from you, right? Who's going to want to partner with Kronos when they could come in and try to take the whole deal? So hence Traxxion. And Traxxion was actually built for a couple of specific customers. And then we realized that this is actually like a real product that has some teeth to it that could be marketed. So we formed Traxxion and launched the product. Our largest customer right now is about 17,000 employees. Our smallest customer is about 150 employees. We have a few others in the middle there, 10,000 employees, 3,500 employees, 1,500 employees. But what we found is that we took a like the frontline worker approach, the end user first, mobile approach first, and then built back from there. And as a result, we've had a product that's been very well, the response to it's been very well accepted. As I demo the product to influencers, advisors, SI partners, they're blown away by what we have. And so it doesn't mean we're sleeping well at night or startup, but it's been great. So that's what got me back into it.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you back in this space, and I do want to go a little bit deeper on like the traction, kind of the architecture and the innovations. But before we get into that, would love to kind of dive in a little bit more on like the current state. I know you talked about a lot of the acquisitions and how that took some key players out of the market, but we had the same experience here at OutSail recently where we were going through and categorizing and just kind of updating all of our point solutions. And we went through like the ATS section and there was a couple dozen. And we went through the LMS section, there was a couple dozen. We got into the workforce management side. We had like stopped at 5 or 6 that we could rely on. And so I guess just help me understand both the independent workforce management market as well as kind of the platforms that people are familiar with. Where are the limitations? You mentioned that workforce management is the hardest thing, and I totally agree. But specifically, what does that look like? Where are the problems?
Well, I think one is the complexity of scheduling and the experience on the mobile device. In most systems I've seen, it's really basic what you're able to do. And then on the administration side, the flexibility of it, like in Traxxion, for example, if I'm going in and I've created a calc rule in Traxxion, and I find I need to go in and modify it in several other systems, including big ones I won't name specifically, you have to start from scratch to modify the calc rule. In Traxxion, I can go in, I can modify it, I can clone the calc rule, and then tweak that one, and now I have two, or I can sunset the previous one, whatever. So it's the flexibility and speed at which you can do things in the system to build the calc rules, modify calc rules, push to production those calc rules is really like no other. And then when you talk about AI, we look at AI like I like to call it assistive intelligence more than artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is our approach is that we're never going to have artificial intelligence make decisions where there needs to be accountability, right? We will assist our customers in making the decision, but at the end of the day, somebody has to be accountable for that. You can't hold AI accountable for a decision. And so what we're doing is we're focused on how do we use AI in the system to highlight or bring to attention issues in the data or in the system that the end user, the administrator needs to know about. And most companies we're selling to, they don't have a team of data scientists or anything like that. So in a lot of cases, they're forced to be very tactical in the environment rather than strategic. And we're leveraging AI to be able to provide that level of strategic functionality to them. Like, what are the things that I should be asking of my data that I don't even know to ask? What are the trends in my data that AI is seeing that needs to be brought to my attention that I need to act on, right? Historical data is out the back windshield or the back window. Predictive is out the front window. Hey, this is what could happen based off of what we're seeing. And then prescriptive is based off of all of that. This is what we think you should be doing in your system, in your data, and in your organization. So if it's not providing answers to those kind of questions, really all you have is a beautiful data store, right? It should really be able to provide a level of intelligence and assistance for you to be able to make strategic business decisions in your organization. And that we actually posted something the other day on social media about statistics show that 80% of payroll errors start in poor time collection. So we see it as it's the foundation of everything else. I could have the best gross to net engine in the world, but if my zero to gross is wrong, everything down line is going to be wrong. So the idea is to fix it where it starts in that zero to gross space, make sure that that's rock solid, bulletproof, correct. And then regardless of the gross to net engine it flows to, or the HCM system it flows to, it's going to be a much more quality experience, accurate and accurate data.
Yeah, no, it seems like kind of the perfectly complex space within the HCM environment where I'm thinking by contrast, maybe like a compensation management tool, which is almost exclusively used by a comp guru who loves living in spreadsheets. So you can make that thing real spreadsheet heavy, real configurable, and your user loves it, right? They love it because it's powerful and it's configurable. But in the workforce management side, it needs to have that power and that configurability even more so. But the end user is not the admin. The end user is someone who's got dirty hands after a day of working in the field and needs just the fewest buttons on their phone so they can get out and get on with their day. So I think that balance between the power but then making it elegantly simple on the front end is really what I think probably where the rub lies with trying to make workforce management work.
Yeah, and it's about reducing the friction for the frontline worker. We hear stories of people that at manufacturing facilities, there's a line of people all trying to clock in. They're all supposed to be clocked in by 8 a.m. They're all trying to clock in, and they're doing their badge swipe, their finger scan. Well, what if you could just look at a camera and biometrically it clocks you in, or you're using your mobile device and through proper geofencing, you walk in the building and it knows you're here. Do you want to clock in? Yes, bam, and you're in. So there's not this line out the door. Things like building services companies. We have a client that does building services. They can't hang a clock on the wall because it's not their building. So we have geofence QR codes you can print on and stick on the wall, and it's geofence, so somebody can't take the QR code off the wall, take it to their car, and clock in, right? But it's all about removing the roadblocks or the friction for frontline workers to be able to do their job. Route-based tracking, right? If I'm a home healthcare worker and I'm traveling from my starting point to my first stop, it tracks that time. And when I get to that stop, it says, "Oh, do you want to now clock into this location?" Yes, it clocks you out of your travel time, clocks you into that location. When I leave that, it does the same thing again. So it's efficiencies like that that just make it so much easier for the frontline worker to do what they need to do. If they have multiple jobs and they're having to switch from one job to the other job, to be able to do that very easily with it from their phone, to handle multiple job approval levels. So I've got one supervisor for one job, one supervisor for another one. It's one timesheet, but it requires approvals of each time punch for each different job that rolls up into a master approver or something like that. So it's really about eliminating the friction for the frontline worker to be able to do what they do.
Absolutely. And when you think about buying decisions in the workforce management space, and really in the HR tech space broadly, I think the constant dilemma that I think will never go away is best in class versus all in one, best in class versus all in one. And our philosophy, what I tell clients is there's no, perfect formula, but I typically apply a two-part test. One test is it critical to the business that this is best in class, right? A high growth tech company that just raises funding, they're probably going to want a best in class ATS. So that's one test. And, I think with the clients that you guys work with, manufacturing, frontline workers, workforce, that's going to pass almost always that they need best in class technology here. But the other test that we always will pose to clients is how close is the system you're talking about to payroll? Because like a learning management system, it's pretty far from payroll. And so if that integration breaks, you're not breaking people's paychecks. So I think that's the part where the challenge I see, that the headwind that for workforce management is it is very close to payroll. So I'd love to hear you just kind of make the case for why best in class still makes sense, even as it's very, very close to people's pay.
Sure. So, look, I spent 30 years selling an all-in-one solution, right? And promoting an all-in-one solution, both at Ultimate Software and at Dayforce. And there's absolutely value and benefit to that. What you typically find though is in those solutions, there's probably one, maybe two areas they're really best of breed at, and the rest is there to fill out the offering, right? It's there and it's okay. And look, my partner networks at both companies were, hey, we have recruitment and onboarding in our product, and it's pretty good. It's probably 80% of the way there, 75% of the way there. But for those customers where it's not, we partner with iSIMs, or we partner with Smart Recruiters or some other ATS that can do that. Our learning was pretty good, but we also partnered with Cornerstone and D2L and others that could offer a whole nother level of functionality that is very, it's very specific. Their 100% focus is on that area of functionality. So they're typically going to be a little better in most cases. And that's why all of these vendors have rich partner communities. So yes, I do like the whole unified approach, one throat to choke, one back to pat, if you will. But when you look at enterprise customers, the above 5,000 employees, invariably they do best of breed. So it's kind of like this thing that's been reserved for the larger companies that had the resources, the time, the money there to be able to manage the aggregation of data and the interfaces and all that between all these best of breed. Well, nowadays with technology the way it is, that best of breed doesn't have to be reserved for big enterprise customers. The guys always laughed at me because I use this example, but it's like stereo equipment, right? When we used to have the home stereo equipment, though, right? I can have different brands of the head unit, the speakers, the DVD player, whatever, and they all seamlessly connect to each other through common standard interfaces, or in our case, web services interfaces. So what we've built with Traxxion is the ability through web services to seamlessly connect with whatever that gross to net or HCM engine is, to be able to seamlessly connect to that so the data flows seamlessly between the systems as if it was one system. And that's Canada. That's no different than what a lot of all-in-one vendors do now. They've got a bevy of products and technologies they've either acquired or partnered with that they loosely couple together or interface together. They sell it as one unified solution, but it's really a bunch kind of cobbled together. And so having a best of breed solution like time, if I can say, hey, I can plug that in and my time issues and scheduling issues are solved, regardless of what my gross to net engine is, it seamlessly connects. It pulls all the reference data from there. It pushes my punch data back in to be validated by that gross to net engine. We feel like we're at a time now where that's more feasible now than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I've actually used like an hourglass analogy when it comes to best in class and all, where I see it happen over the lifespan of a business. When they're startups, they get these point solutions. It's just, one person buys it to solve their one problem. And then right around a couple hundred employees, they look around, they go, oh my gosh, too many tools, bundle, bundle, bundle. And then, like you said, as they get bigger, well, now we have a dedicated team of recruiters. They want their own tool. Now we have a dedicated team for total comp. They want their own tool. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is that, that's more of the how it's been, but that doesn't have to be how it goes going forward, where that middle group kind of has to sacrifice all in one. And it seems like the key fulcrum there is the quality of integrations, right? If integrations truly feel as native and as reliable as what comes in a platform, then I don't need to be married to whatever comes out of the box with my HCM vendor. I can look around because it's about the equivalent. So curious on the integration front, do you see innovation? Do you see kind of next generation things that are making the third party approach easier?
Yeah, and let me touch on that. Just one more thing too is, so from a kind of a macro level, we've been already seeing best of breed for a few years in that, um, if you think about the vendors that do HCM, most of them don't do ERP, right? And HCM is for a long time been it's part of ERP, right? But if you look at these vendors, every customer they have is using somebody else for ERP, but yet they're using them for HCM. Why? It's because of the 100% focus on HCM. We're just taking that down to a more micro level where, yes, you can do the same thing with areas of the HCM product too. So, yeah, sure. Some people buy Workday and they buy Workday HR and they buy Workday payroll and Workday time and all that, and it's all one. But a lot of times you see, Workday for HR, you'll see UKG for payroll and time maybe, or Dayforce for pay and time underneath that. So there's a bit of that now that's already happening. And again, so from to your point, from the integration and the technology standpoint, the most of the technology that's on the market now for WFM, Dayforce is probably one of the newest, and it came out in 2009, right? So it's 14 years old. Dimension is much older technology with newer UX on top of it, but it's still older technology. So there's a lot of functional and technical debt in those products. They're still in their own right. There's great products, right? But they tend to, in the grand scheme of things, can be more complicated to administer. There's more overhead to them because they're supporting all the rest of HCM functionality on top of that, maybe the rules engine or calc engine or whatnot. And so we think we take a much more streamlined, straightforward approach to that. And at the end of the day, if your uh, if your time collection system and your scheduling system is rock solid and doing what it needs to do, it allows the users to be much more strategic, right? Everybody knows HR is, yeah, they're strategic, they're strategic. Well, why aren't we giving payroll people, which is just, if not more critical, the fines, penalties, and everything. Why aren't we building tools to make them more strategic? And then time collection, why aren't we building tools to make them more strategic, to be able to manage the two, our labor costs, the most expensive part of all of an organization is your labor costs. So building tools that are much more strategic for that user to be able to plan at the foundational level what that organization is going to look like, operate expenses, labor expenses and stuff, to then flow through the rest of HR.
Yeah, I think when people are faced with that best in class all in one, all they're thinking about is, well, what happens if it breaks? What happens if I have to manually move data? What happens if it, and so they're worried about the time suck sort of there, right? The potential time suck. But what you're saying is that they're not exactly thinking about the other time sucks that happen by just not having the right time data in the first place, right? All the reconciliations, all the, monitoring employees, reminding them to fill things. So it's like, if you can solve those areas, even if something is quote unquote integrated and you don't feel like that's going to be the same as the native TNA system that an HCM provides, here's all the different areas that it's going to save you otherwise. And so I think that's kind of one way to get people to see the light on bringing in best in class and how many problems they can solve.
Yeah, and it's the attention to detail too, because to your point, if I have one system that has everything and one piece of it breaks, how does it affect the rest of the system? Right. Whereas if I have these more bespoke solutions that are all seamlessly integrated together, if one is having challenges, it doesn't create challenge it necessarily create challenges for the rest of the solution. So and you're typically like we're going to respond from a support standpoint to a customer on time a whole lot faster than maybe a larger ERP that's also sold time is going to be able to respond to that
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think for all those reasons of the best in class, the higher service level, the more attention to detail, I think it definitely made a strong case for why best in class workforce management's on the rise. So I know the half hour's flown by. I guess we'll just wrap here in terms of understanding where can folks find you, find Traxxion, and what are you guys looking to kind of share with the market in 2026?
Yeah. So Traxxion, TRAXXION.ai is the website. I'm Jim Jensen. I'm Jim at Traxxion.ai. Reach out to me directly. And then, of course, you can find us on LinkedIn and on X. And, we would love the opportunity to kind of show you what the difference is with Traxxion, what motivated me, prompted me to put my cleats back on and come back in the industry. And if you look at who we have on the team at Traxxion, they're all senior people that have been there at Kronos, at WorkBrain, at Dayforce, at all of the big players, Workday, that have all decided to come and join us and participate in the passion we have for workforce management and what we're doing to change the industry from a WFM standpoint.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure catching up with you, Jim. Like I said, I don't know if I can properly thank you for the kindness you showed 7 years ago when we were just getting started, but we're excited to share Traxxion with clients of ours going into next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brett. I appreciate it.